This is Jonathan. This is Melissa. She's actually my wife. I'm her husband. We're married. We married here at the center. So tells you how dedicated we are. We are volunteers for the Cascades Raptor Center, and I'll start out by saying that the Cascades Raptor Center is primarily a volunteer-driven organization. We have 3 paid staff members and over 40 volunteers who give our time weekly to come in and do a shift cleaning and feeding and caring for the birds. And there are even volunteers here on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day taking care of the birds because the birds need to be fed. So what the Cascades Raptor Center is, who's been here before? Let me start with that. You've been here before and you've been here before? Well, we hope that this is the first of many visits for you. We're always growing. We always have new birds out on display. The Cascades Raptor is a twofold kind of organization. We are a wildlife rehabilitation hospital as well as a nature center and education center. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the wildlife rehabilitation, and then we'll have Melissa talk about our educational outreach goals. What we do I was telling a few people this before we started, what we do as a wildlife rehabilitation center is that we are licensed wildlife rehabilitation, so we can't take care of cats and dogs or domestic animals. But what we are permitted to take care of are wild animals. And we receive calls from members of the community who find or have found a bird, specifically a bird of prey, and it's in trouble and needs help. And as I was saying, we will send somebody out 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to pick up that bird anywhere in Lane County, and sometimes even farther, to bring it back in for care with the ultimate goal of releasing it back into the wild. We get about 200 birds a year in through this method, and we are able to release about 50 to 60% of those birds every year. So we're looking at a return rate of 100 and 110 birds a year back into the wild, which is a pretty good goal. The birds that remain, the birds that are too injured to survive in the wild, some obviously die in care. They're just too injured to survive. But there are birds whose injuries are so severe that they can't be returned to the wild, but they're not so severe that they need to be, say, euthanized or something like that, in which case those birds become educational birds. They either stay here on our center or they travel to other raptor centers around the country, and there is a lot of give and take between raptor centers around the country. And so all the birds that you are going to see in the enclosures and on the gloves today are permanently injured birds. They cannot be returned to the wild. As I said, our first goal is to return a bird to the wild, so if it can go, it will. There's a great story about that, about an owl that we had who was here for 4 years, and we had always thought that she was just permanently injured, and the more we watched her, the more we realized that she was regaining her strength. So after 4 years of captivity, we were able to release her back into the wild. It was a very moving day, actually. So, but then we have the educational aspect, so let Melissa talk a little bit about that.
We do hundreds of educational programs a year, both on-site and off-site. So we do these handler talks every weekend, all year. But we also go to area schools, we go to senior citizens retirement homes, we go to scouting troop meetings, we go to festivals. You've probably seen us at the Eugene celebration and Art in the Vineyard and various places like that. And we also host different groups up here, probably 5-6 times a week. There's a group up here. We give them a tour, we tell them a lot about raptors, and we're always interested in hosting more tours, both on-site and then programs off-site. As well, we've been known to host birthday parties for both kids and adults, the highlight of which for me is the owl pellet dissection. So I always love it when little kids have eaten the cake and they move right on to dissecting owl pellets. We give them a magnifying glass and tweezers and a picture of a mouse skeleton and then their own owl pellet to pull apart. And their record is 4 mouse skulls in 1 owl pellet. So see if you can beat that. We're committed to talking about birds of prey and doing education about birds of prey because raptors are an indicator species. We can study what we're doing to the environment and the effects all around by studying raptors. So for instance, we're studying pesticide use and so looking at raptors to see how pesticide use affects them. And usually it's pretty negative. Pesticides, mice come and eat the pesticides, and then birds come and eat the mice, and there's a big problem. We'll talk a little bit more about some of that later. But I think we should talk about what is a raptor. It's a bird of prey, a bird that eats, rips prey apart with its beak, catches its prey with its talons. They're obligate carnivores, so there are no vegetarians here, except for the volunteers. They have to eat meat, and So most of the raptors here eat small birds, and occasionally the smaller ones will eat insects and lizards and things like this. This bird could, in the wild, eat a skunk with no real problem. So tell a little bit more about what a raptor is, what makes them special.
Yeah, there are other birds of prey that aren't raptors. If you think of like a great blue heron, a great blue heron is a bird that eats amphibians and eats fish, so it's preying upon these animals, but it's not considered a raptor. So does anybody actually know what the real specific difference between a raptor and a bird of prey is? Exactly. A raptor, the Latin root of the word raptor actually means to seize and to carry away. So raptors are actually the only birds that kill their prey with their talons and carry it, transport it with their talons. All their birds do that with their beaks, actually. All the birds of prey. So a great blue heron will kill the amphibian or the frog or something like that with its beak and then carry it with its beak if it needs to go elsewhere. The thing with raptors is that they do seize their prey. Their talons are the main working part of their hunting strategy. And there's several adaptations that really kind of make that worthwhile for them. First of all, they have locking talons. So not only are their talons quite long, you can see hers there, and sharp, and grasped very firmly. It's been rumored, and I think it's pretty much true, that a full-grown eagle on a glove can still break your wrist through the glove just by pressure alone, if they wanted to, which they typically don't, which is nice. So they're very strong. But then on top of that all, their talons lock in a shut position, so that once they get that prey in their talons, there's no escaping. The only way to release those talons, it's a tendon and a locking system in their elbow. You have to straighten out their elbow in order for the talons to unlock. So as long as their elbows are bent. So that's one adaptation. There's other adaptations like the osprey, which...
the osprey is fascinating, actually. It will... Are you going to stay? The osprey will grab the fish and it will be perpendicular to its body. But then it grabs it, and in midair, it actually turns it so that it's parallel with its body, and it's much more streamlined as it flies away with its fish.
So it's...
Did you want to come up for a moment? Are you okay?
So So that's the working end of the business end of a raptor. The obviously other working or business end of the raptor is the beak. The very sharp, curved, pointed beak that we like to talk about their talons as their forks and their beaks as their knives. So they hold down their food with their talons and they tear it to pieces with their beaks. There are other adaptations even in that. Falcons typically have a little notch in their upper beak. It's called the tomial tooth. It does look like a little tooth coming out of their beak. And that tooth just happens to fit perfectly in between the cervical vertebrae of whatever prey they're going after. And so they just bite at the neck, they separate the spine, and it's an instant death for the prey. So a raptor like a hawk here will tear up their prey. Everybody knows about owl pellets. Owls give pellets. Well, raptors, like hawks, give pellets too. They all have pellets. Pellets are a way of separating the digestible bits from the indigestible bits. So they have hawks will have an area called a crop, which is kind of an intermediary stomach, which separates the meat and the organs from the fur and the bones, or the feathers. Yeah, fur and bones, and they bring up the fur and bones in a neat little package called a pellet. So the question was, would a red-tailed hawk and a great horned owl attack each other? Could happen. It would be a pretty even match at this point. But but we'll talk about owl pellets. Why owl pellets are so much more interesting than hawk pellets? Because if you think about it, we'll let Melissa talk about how great horned. Why don't you just talk about great horned owls in general and owls in general and how they eat their food, which is different from the way they eat their food.
I will, but first let me introduce our helper today. This is Lorax. Lorax is a great horned owl, and she's with us because as a baby, about 2 weeks old, she fell out of her nest and broke this wing in multiple places. Baby bird's bones grow so quickly that the bones never healed well enough to allow her really excellent flight, which a bird must have in order to hunt. So she came to us very, very young, I think at about 3 weeks old, and you can see how this wing still droops much more than the other wing. She's a really good representative of owls. Owls swallow their prey whole. So if she were in the wild and she were to catch, say, a rat, it would just go down that beak, down, down, down. I wish I had a mouse today to show you. Then their stomach makes a pellet. They can't dissolve bones, fur, or feathers of their prey, as Jonathan said. So the stomach makes a pellet, and about 24 hours after owls eat, they cough that up. It's about 2 inches long, a little grayish, whitish. And again, if you dissect it, you can find little bones and mouse skulls and little teeth and things like that. It's fascinating. And I should recommend right away the kids' book, also fun for adults, called Owl Puke, which talks all about owl pellets, and then also comes with your own pellet to dissect. But owls have been adapted to be marvelous hunting birds. So working from the top down, Lorax has these feathered tufts. These are not actually horns or ears. These are just feathers, and they help her to camouflage. So when she's sitting on a branch, smaller birds and different rodents and things like that don't necessarily see that this is an owl and a predator, because these help her look like a piece of the tree. It's very possible that you might be hiking Spencer's Butte and there are great horned owls up in the trees and you just don't see them because they are so adept at camouflage. She also, as other owls do, has feathered discs around her eyes, which act as little satellite dishes to help her focus sounds, because owls have incredible hearing and sight. Her ears are actually lopsided, just like other owls. One is up here and one is down here. And that allows for much greater hearing than we have. You know, we hear side to side, but their lopsided ears help them to hear from above and below, so they can pinpoint the location of their prey in dim light, even darkness. She's got the very sharp beak, as Jonathan explained, and then the eyes, which go way, way back in her head. And actually, if we moved her feathers aside and looked through her ear, we could see the back of her eye socket. They're fixed in their sockets. They don't move side to side like ours. And so, you know, nature has made them so that they can turn their heads almost all the way around, but not all the way around. We're not talking about Lorax as the exorcist here. She can do about 270 degrees. And then she's got the really fluffy feathers. Let's see if she'll let me demonstrate. Can I do this? My finger goes to the knuckle before it touches Lorax's body, which is pretty typical of owls. She's all fluffy feathers and hollow bones. So how much do you think this bird weighs? Yes.
3 pounds.
3 pounds, absolutely. She's about 3.5 pounds. Great horned owls can lift 2 to 3 times their prey, so she could actually take a 6-pound skunk or something like that. She's got the very sharp talons and the very strong toes, and she uses those to grab, as Jonathan said. And then the feathers on owls, they're very fluffy, very soft. They have a serrated edge, and this helps the wind to pass silently through so that the prey never even hears the owl coming. So they really are hunting machines.
Are there any questions about owls before we move on a little bit? Or?
Yeah.
If it picked up a 6-pound skunk, it would eat it whole?
No, that's a great question, actually.
The question was if she could could she eat a whole skunk? Yeah.
No, she probably couldn't swallow a whole skunk. I think Loraxes or great horns are capable of a medium-sized rat swallowed whole. In the case of the skunk, she would hold that down and rip it apart. Yeah.
But they do have a non-sensitivity to the odor of a skunk. We get them in here sometimes, and they have been sprayed so completely that their feathers have actually turned orange from the chemical in the skunk spray, and they stink to high heaven, and they don't seem to care at all.
No, we'll pull up to do a volunteer shift, and we can smell them from over here in the parking area.
Yeah. It can be bad sometimes. Any other questions about owls before we move on a little bit? I'm kind of glad we started with the owl because it helps to talk about a hawk kind of in relation to an owl. Everybody probably knows what kind of hawk this is. In fact, she's standing in the perfect way right now to show off her namesake right here. This is Uriel. She is a red-tailed hawk. The most common North American hawk. When you're driving down I-5 and you see a large bird sitting on a fence post or a telephone pole, 99% of the time it is a red-tailed hawk. They are considered perch and pounce predators, so they perch about 80% of their time. They don't actually fly all that much. They'll perch in a spot that has proven to give prey before, and they wait for that mouse or that snake to stick its head out, and then they just kind of drop down on top of it. So they're kind of opportunists in that way. They will also eat roadkill and carrion. They're opportunists in the extreme sense. They're going to find the easiest meal possible, and a meal that has already been killed is easier than killing one yourself. So Uriel, her particular story is she's been with us for almost 18 years. Birds do live much, much longer in captivity than they do in the wild. An average age for a red-tailed hawk in the wild would be 5 to 8 years. In captivity, they've been known to go 28 years for a red-tailed hawk, actually. Well, it's a free meal, free health care, no predators, you know. What happened with her is that she flew into a fence and destroyed. There's a certain tendon. I'm going to put my arm in a funny position. This is what a bird's wing looks like when you take off all the feathers and like that. They kind of stick their elbow down and their wrist up. And there's a tendon that actually goes between their shoulder and their wrist that allows them to do this. It's called the patagial tendon. And she flew into a barbed wire fence and ripped open the skin surrounding that tendon. And before anybody found her, the skin actually re-healed, but re-healed with the tendon outside of the skin. So the tendon unfortunately died, and we weren't able to save the mobility of the wing. So her wing, if you see her flap at one point, you'll notice that one wing just kind of stays like this and does this sort of thing. So that's why Uriel's with us. She is one of our longer residents here. Red-tailed hawks, like owls, can turn their head 270 degrees. Owls aren't the only ones who can do that, though everybody thinks they are. In fact, all birds can turn their head almost 270 degrees. There's a reason for that beyond the fact that they can't move their eyes in their sockets. Hawks also have limited mobility. Hawks also have to take care of their feathers, just like we have to take care of our hair. And their feathers require them they need to be waterproof, they need to be warm, they need to be clean. So you'll see birds preening, which is kind of a process of running their feathers through their beaks to zip them back. If you ever look at a feather, you can see that it kind of zips back together. But the other thing they have to do is coat their feathers with a waxy substance. Well, that waxy substance is secreted by a gland at the base of their tail, and they need to get back there somehow, and I wouldn't want to take those talons and spread that wax all over my body, so they use their forehead. So they actually can turn their head all the way around, rub it against this gland at the back of their tail, and then use their forehead to distribute that all over their feathers.
I want to pause for just a moment and direct your attention to
We have a special...
who has seen the golden eagle behind you and has decided that this is not cool. It's okay.
Look at that. That's a defensive posture if I ever saw one. She is making herself look as big as possible.
This is why they're called the lions of the forest. You wouldn't want to tangle with this, would you?
So, do you want to bring him down? We can swap. I can just go over there. If you want to take her back.
No, I'll take her back.
Lorax, it's time for Lorax to go.
I think it might be. What do you think, Lorax?
So,
Jonathan, tell them about feathers and muscles.
feathers and muscles. Oh yeah. Well, as Lorax is showing here, is that almost every feather on these birds is individually controllable. So they'll do something called a rouse, which is where they puff up all their feathers and then shake, and it's kind of like running your hand through your hair. It's putting everything back in place. But you can also see that she's actually controlling almost every feather on her body to make herself look as big as possible. So she's, each one can come out, and every one of them has a corresponding little musculature with it that allows them to change that around. And now we're gonna welcome our new special guest here. Come up, girl. Bring her over here.
About the hawk.
Of course.
Melissa explained how, for stealth reasons, they're soft. The feathers. Do the hawk have that characteristic too?
No, that is a characteristic unique to owls in general. Owls need silent flight for several reasons. Obviously, they need to, or a couple reasons. Obviously, the prey needs to not hear them coming because they want to catch the prey. But the thing is, too, they need to be able to hear the prey over their own wing beat. So when they're flying, they don't always see their prey. They're often listening to their prey. So they need to be silent so they can continue to hear. In the case of hawks, it's the perch and pounce method. It's a surprise attack in a way. So they don't need to be silent. They're silent because they're sitting still. And then when the mouse or the prey shows itself, then they'll jump down on it, and it usually happens so quickly that there's nothing the prey can do. In the case of other types of hawks, who chase their prey, it's definitely a surprise attack where they will be flying through the forest, and they'll spot a bird at a feeder, and they will bomb out of the forest as fast as possible towards that bird and usually outrun it and knock it right out of the air. That would be like the Cooper's hawk would be a hawk that would do that, or a sharp-shinned hawk. If you have a lot of bird feeders at home, I'm sure you've seen one of those two birds around your feeder. A mid-sized hawk with a dark cap, long tail, chasing birds out of your feeder is probably one of those hawks. So we do have a special guest here today, and this is Kit, who is actually our education director of education for the Raptor Center. And she has one of our newer residents, and I'll let her talk about that.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. So I've brought down one of the largest raptors that we have here in Oregon. This is a golden eagle. So there are two types of eagles that can be found in Oregon. We have the bald eagle and the golden eagle. The bald and golden eagle are two very different types of eagles, however. The bald eagle is a fishing eagle, a fish eagle. They're a group of eagles that can be found around the world, and the bald eagle is just one species of that, usually living along waterways, doing quite a bit of fishing, but not exclusive fishermen. Whereas the golden eagle is a booted eagle, so part of the booted eagle family. They get that name because they have feathers that go all the way down to their toes. And the booted eagle family does not fish at all, so they don't live along the waterways. Instead, the golden eagle can be found in open countries. So here they're found in eastern Oregon, where they're going to be hunting large to medium-sized mammals primarily. So the golden eagles here in the United States like to primarily like to eat rabbits. So different types of rabbits are their favorite types of food. You can see they have the same characteristics of all the raptors that you've seen so far today, though. They have very powerful feet. They have talons, special claws on the end of those toes called talons, which they're using to catch their prey. They also have that short beak that's curved downward, and then very good vision as well. So it's just that you can see everything a little bit better on the eagles because they're so much bigger than the other groups of raptors that you guys have seen so far today. Can you put your wings up? He's just a little bit nervous. This golden eagle is a male, so he's actually quite small. He's actually even a very small male. He's only about 8 pounds, so that's pretty little. If you go and look at him with his roommate, our female golden eagle, she's 12 pounds, and you can really see the difference in their sizes. They get their name from the golden feathers that are on top of their head that go down to the back of their neck. And then they have different types of brown coloration on their body. Now, the biggest mistake that I notice when I have this golden eagle out is that people say that they've seen golden eagles here in the valley. And those golden eagle reports here in the valley are probably just a case of mistaken identity. The bald eagles do not get their white head and their white tail until they are about 5 to 7 years old. So before that, they have kind of a brownish head, brownish tail that kind of molts into a white head and tail. And so when people say they've seen a golden eagle along the Willamette, I usually we're not too far off saying that they're actually seeing a young bald eagle and not a golden eagle. Now, the golden eagles are an interesting raptor in that they can fly very fast. They're capable of dives like a peregrine falcon, recorded speeds of up to 200 miles per hour. They're also a perch and pounce predator and a soaring predator as well. So they have lots of different types of hunting styles that they're able to do.
11 miles down I-5, we get there, there's no hawk in sight. We don't know exactly where it was supposed to be. As far as we know, it could be injured and dying and crawled off into the bushes, or it could have been what's called mantling, where a bird that catches their food will put its wings over the food so that no other birds can see it. It's a perfectly healthy bird, but it's just got its wings spread out like that, and it has flown away. So should you find a bird, the best thing you can do is to remain in eye contact with that bird as you get someone to call us or you find someone else to call us. If possible, to place a box or something over the bird. That way we know the bird is going to be there. We know what kind of bird it is. We can get set up here and prepared for when that bird comes back in. if at all possible, remain with the bird and watch what goes and restrain it if at all possible with a box, or laundry baskets work great too, that sort of thing. So that's something that just community members can do to help us quite a bit. We have all been on the wild hawk chase, where we've driven out somewhere and the hawk is long gone, and we've just driven 40 miles to get there. So we don't complain. We appreciate people calling and caring about the birds, but it is to ensure that the bird makes it back. There are some things that finders can do. So just wanted to stick that in. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. If you could see these birds and you could just hear them, could you tell the difference between, like, I know that has a real shrill kind of a high pitch.
Yeah, we could. I mean, certainly by working here at the center, we can tell the difference between it. Unfortunately, most people have the Hollywood experience of raptors, which every raptor sounds like a red-tailed hawk. So that just happens to be the way they do it. The red-tailed hawk has a very distinctive cry. You've all heard it in any cowboy movie or anything like that. They'll have a bald eagle flying over, and they'll have a red-tailed hawk calling, because bald eagles just do not have the kind of presence in terms of their voice that a red-tailed hawk has. They have much shriller call. It's kind of more of a chatter than a scream. But yes, working here, we've learned, obviously we all know the difference between which bird. We can hear them across the complex here. We know who's calling, and we can usually tell even if there's a problem. If we hear the alarm call of, say, the red-shouldered hawk, who has a very distinctive alarm call, we'll know that there's something up, and maybe we should go over and check out what's going on. And in fact, in the wild, identifying birds is done a lot through their call as well. Owl calls are very distinctive. And you'll often hear an owl before you ever see it. So.
Right. And the Hollywood version of the owl call is the great horned owl call. So, in the movie Hoot, which is about burrowing owls, those burrowing owls were making great horned owl calls. Seriously? In that movie. So.
Were they really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's funny.
So.
Well, we'd like to thank you all for showing up today, and we're glad we got our special visitor, Orion, out here today. And wanted to just end by saying that your admission you've paid here helps and goes directly to the birds. We receive no state or federal funding for the operation of the center. We operate solely on admissions, donations, and gifts from community members, from yourself, and from private organizations. So, if we have memberships available. Memberships are good for a year. They allow you to come up anytime you want. We also have the ability to adopt a bird, and unfortunately, it does not mean you get to take the bird home. But what it means is that you care. Your donation for the adoption goes into the care for that bird. You receive a package from that bird. If it's a bird that can be on the glove, you're welcome to come up at any time, and we'll bring that bird out on the glove for a one-on-one visit with you. And I just wanted to say again that any donations that we receive go directly into the help of to the birds, usually for food. Food is one of our biggest costs here at the center.
We can do this through your website, right?
Oh yeah, yep. There's adoptions. We have a very comprehensive website. You can do memberships and adoptions through the website. And so we just want to thank you again for coming today.